Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Chicken People podcast, where today we're getting into a topic that might just ruffle a few feathers: medicated feed for new chicks. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another episode on chicken feed, stay with me because this one's a little different. Picture this: you're at a backyard barbecue, having a few drinks, a few laughs, and the conversation drifts into the realm of conspiracy theories. The moon landing hoax, 9/11, even the elusive lizard people. It's intense. Things get heated. And everyone has an opinion. Well, I'm here to tell you that the debate over medicated feed in the backyard chicken community can be just as divisive. Some chicken keepers swear by using it, insisting that medicated feed is the only way to keep your chicks safe and healthy, while others believe it's a plot, concocted by big agribusiness to keep us and our chickens hooked on unnecessary medication. Well, today, we're going to examine the evidence, weigh the pros and cons, and by the end of the episode, you'll be equipped to make your own informed decision. Let's get into it. Now, to really talk about this subject, we have to start at the beginning. We know that people have been raising chickens for thousands of years, most of that time not having any access to processed feed. In fact, the different mass-produced crumbles and pellets that we all use now have only been around since about 1910. But even once it was introduced, it took a while before it really became widely used. A decade after feed started to be mass-produced, we started factory farming chickens, creating a larger demand for a consistent feed supply that could provide all the nutrition needed to keep those chicken mills going. But as the demand for more and more chickens grew, so did the risk of chickens becoming sick. Farmers had to sacrifice their standards of cleanliness, a key component to keeping their chickens healthy, and instead prioritize production and profits. So medicated feed was developed to address the significant losses these poultry farmers faced due to diseases, particularly coccidiosis. This new, innovative product, produced by the industrial side of the poultry business, aimed to improve flock health and, more importantly to the farmers, increase productivity. The concept was to incorporate coccidiosis into the feed, helping the new chicks develop an immunity to a disease that was costing the egg industry more profit than they were willing to sacrifice. Companies like Merck and Pfizer were among the pioneers in creating this medication, and since then, like so many other concoctions mixed up in a lab, it's become a government-regulated additive in both commercial and backyard poultry feeds, and are advertised as a must-have component to keeping healthy chickens. But like with so many things mixed up by scientists in the name of profit, there's still a lot of skeptics when it comes to the question of whether or not it's actually a good idea to use. On paper, it seems like a no-brainer. Who wouldn't want to use a feed that has a built-in ability to keep your chickens from contracting a deadly disease? But there seems to be some possible downside to using this as well, and we'll get into that in a little bit. First, let's talk about some of the reasons to use a medicated feed. The primary selling point? Its ability to prevent coccidiosis, which is a parasitic disease that can devastate a flock if left unchecked. Coccidiosis is caused by protozoa that thrive in wet, dirty environments and attack the intestinal linings of chickens who come into contact with it. An exposed chicken will experience severe damage to its digestive system, rendering it unable to properly digest food or absorb the nutrients that it needs. Symptoms you might notice include diarrhea, dehydration, weight loss, and chickens who contract this may lose their desire to eat altogether, possibly even going into a state of depression before succumbing to this disease that usually kills pretty quickly. As to the effectiveness of this modified food, there's a study published in the Journal of Applied Poultry Research stating that the use of amprolium in medicated feed significantly reduces the chances of coccidiosis in young chicks, providing a protective effect that is critical during their early stages of life. It's been made to be a very convenient option for chicken owners, as medicated feed is a straightforward way to administer this preventative medication. There's no need for additional supplements or treatments, just feed your chicks as usual. And though it's hard to find a clear answer on exactly how long it should be fed, most resources will recommend something between 2 and 5 weeks. It also makes it easy to make sure that each chick is receiving a consistent dose of the medication, which is more reliable than sporadic treatments. This is meant to help maintain overall flock health, not just focus on any one bird. And it should, in theory, support each chick's overall health and well-being. By preventing coccidiosis, chicks may grow to be healthier and stronger, be less likely to suffer from stunted growth, secondary infections, or some of the minor issues that can lead to big problems. But it doesn't provide long-term immunity like a vaccine may do. It's really intended to just protect them during their most vulnerable state. Now, if I can add my own 2 cents to that, and I'm not trying to steer you one way or the other, but if coccidiosis is typically contracted by coming into contact with the parasite that lives in the ground, and most chicks are raised in a brooder for their first 6+ weeks or so of life, I'm just not totally sure how that helps. Anyhow, let's move on to some of the known downsides to using medicated feeds. The first one is the fact that you may be giving your little chick unnecessary medication. In clean environments where the risk of coccidiosis is lower, medicated feed may not only be unneeded, but potentially harmful. Over-reliance on these feeds can lead to unnecessary treatment of healthy chicks and possibly have negative effects on their developing immune systems. The medication is based on the active ingredient amprolium, which works by preventing the coccidia parasite from absorbing thiamine, or vitamin B1, which it needs to multiply. But baby chicks need vitamin B1 also. Are they still able to absorb it when on the medication? It's not real clear. But you can find recommendations to give your chick a B1 supplement once they switch over to regular feed, so you can kind of read between the lines there. Antibiotic resistance is another major concern with medicated feed. Although treatments like amprolium are not antibiotics, their use can still impact microbial resistance in a chick's developing body. There's even a report by the World Health Organization highlighting the growing issues of microbial resistance, and they urge for caution in the use of all medicated feeds. There's also a strong argument to be made that relying on medicated feed can prevent chicks from developing their natural immunity to coccidiosis and other diseases. This is one reason that many chicken educators urge people to expose their chicks to the ground that they'll eventually be living on in the early stages of life. Now, this can be done by taking them outside and giving them a chance to peck and scratch in the dirt a little bit, which they'll totally enjoy anyways. Or you can bring the ground to them by cutting a little patch of topsoil off and putting that in the brooder with them. They'll enjoy kicking around some dirt, maybe nibbling on a little grass, and just generally acting like a chicken in its natural state. This is probably why many people don't give medicated feed to chicks who are raised by a mother hen. They're getting regular exposure to the environment around them from early on and building up their immune systems naturally. And one other thing worth mentioning, although it really shouldn't be an issue if you're using this medication correctly, you don't want to eat the eggs or the meat of a chicken who's been on it. There are concerns about medication residues making its way to human consumption if, say, you're feeding chicks that are living with adult birds. So just keep that in mind when deciding what's best for you. And there's other important factors to consider when choosing feed. I might sound like a broken record here, but the cleanliness of your chicken's environment is a big one. If your coop and run are clean and dry, the risk of coccidiosis is significantly reduced. Good hygiene is an important first step if you want to negate the need for added medications. The coccidia thrive in filth, like most nasty things do. We just talked about how important that is for keeping the flies away, and it's important here too. Just how crowded your chicken run might be is another factor. Chickens with plenty of space who aren't trudging through piles of old poo or being forced to live in cramped conditions are going to be less prone to contracting sickness. And it's going to mean that their space is probably much easier to keep clean and sanitary. With the opposite of that also being true, it's easy to understand why this product was first produced as a solution for factory farmers. Did the producers of these drugs just do a good job of convincing everyone that they need it? Even those of us who provide our chickens with good living conditions that don't breed sickness? Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. Local disease prevalence, though maybe hard to gauge, can be another important factor to take into consideration. If coccidiosis has been a problem in your area or within your flock in the past, medicated feed might be a smart preventative measure. I mean, if my neighbor came and told me that they just lost their whole flock of chickens to coccidiosis, you can bet that I'd be on high alert and probably looking for something that I could do for my flock to help keep them safe. But if that's not the case, well, I'm just not sure I want to start preemptively medicating my chickens for something that they may very well never get, especially with how much effort I put into keeping their area clean. Another aspect of your at-home setup to consider is how good your biosecurity practices are. Being diligent in how you introduce new birds to your flock and minimizing exposure to wild birds can reduce the need for these medications. Making sure your feed and water dispensers are kept clean from buildup that can occur when pests or moisture gets in, and protection against bringing in contaminants from other flocks, like maybe someone who comes over for a visit. It's always fun to show other chicken keepers around your coop, but if they're wearing the same shoes that they use when taking care of their own chickens, they could be bringing in some unwanted germs along with them. If you've ever gone to a chicken event, like a big sale where people from all over bring their birds to show off, you may have been asked to step into a shallow pool of disinfectant, probably a solution of bleach. That's because they don't want you bringing in any of your homegrown pathogens with you. And finally, where'd you get those new chicks from? Chicks from reputable breeders or hatcheries with strong health practices are way less likely to need medicated feed compared to those from, we'll say, less reliable sources. Chickens that come from a sketchy ad on Craigslist who maybe don't look to be all that healthy when you get them? Well, you get the idea. Now, with all that said, it really comes down to your own personal philosophy on the matter. If you prefer to stick with a more natural path as much as possible, and are willing to let nature take its course after doing a thorough evaluation of your situation, then that's exactly what you should do. But if after looking over the information, maybe you even had some prior experience with an outbreak at your place, or just feel like your birds are better off receiving this kind of preventative treatment, I mean, they're your birds. You should do what you feel most comfortable with. Choosing whether to use medicated feeds for your chicks involves balancing the benefits of disease prevention with concerns about overuse and potential impacts on natural immunity and antibiotic resistance. Considering your specific circumstances, including environmental conditions, disease history, and management practices, will help you make a more informed decision. Now, before I go, I wanted to do a quick follow-up on a feeder that I had given my thoughts on way back in an earlier episode, the Little Giant Dome Feeder. I mentioned then that even though I thought it was overpriced and I wouldn't spend $80 on a couple pounds of plastic, it seemed to me even then that that was the best feeder available. Well, I did go spend $80 on it, and it was totally worth it. I bought the biggest one that holds 60 pounds of feed for the run that I just put all my big chickens in, and they love it. There's next to no waste. The only feed that hits the ground is if one of my chickens drops it out of her mouth. The dish at the bottom is deep enough, and the feed stays shallow enough that there's almost no way for feed to get tossed out. It's right on the edge of being too deep for my little McNugget, but even with her short stature, she's still able to get down in there and get some of that crumble. I actually didn't think she'd be able to, but now that I see she can, I'm going to get these for the silky coops too. And I don't think the mice are able to get in there either. I've been checking closely every day, haven't seen any of their poops. I think the rim is too high for them to jump up and into it, and it seems like the legs are too slick or too steep for them to climb. And even with 18 chickens in there, holding 60 pounds of feed means that I don't have to fill that thing up very often. I can just dump a whole bag of feed in, and they're good to go for a while. I'm super happy with it. I wish I would have gotten one a long time ago. They actually make a water dispenser that looks almost the same. I was avoiding it because it seemed like the water would get too dirty, but I might have to give it a try now after seeing how good the feeder worked out. Okay, guys, thank you again for listening. I always appreciate it. Keep doing your best to keep those chickens happy and healthy. Look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Have a good one.